Hey YouTube, it's Kathy. Recently I asked on Instagram stories, because I have that question feature now, what kind of booktube videos you guys wanted to see, and everybody seemed to want to have a bookshelf tour. To which I replied, I do not have fancy bookshelves, are you still actually interested? And everybody said yes. So that's what we're doing today. I've never done a bookshelf tour before because they're not anything fancy, they're not anything great to look at, but people like to know what's on everybody's shelves, so I am definitely willing to do this. To begin with, I'm going to give you a little bit of context about the space I'm living in, then I'll show you the 4 different shelves that I have in this space, and I'm not going to go through every single book, but I will show you every single shelf, and if there's anything on a shelf that I feel particularly interested in talking about, I will. If there's anything you see on a shelf that you want me to talk about, let me know down in the comments below, especially if you put a time signature. That'll be really helpful for me to figure out what you're pointing at, and then I can definitely talk to you about it. I just figured that if I pull out every single book, that's either going to be a super long video because I'll feel like I need to say something about it, which becomes problematic when we get to books that I haven't read yet but I just have, because I have probably about 80 of those. Also, it's the middle of summer and it's really hot, so I'm really glad that I'm really only going to be on camera for this part because I'm already sweaty. I had to turn off my fan. Now the reason why we have some weird lighting and this is not my usual filming setup is because I didn't see a need to move all of my furniture around for just this opening bit, and it's going to be kind of interesting to just kind of show you the space I live in because I live in a bachelor suite with another human. So there's not a ton of space. So what I'm going to do first is take you on the mini tour of this apartment because that's all you can really get in this apartment because it's very small. And that will give you an idea as to why I have very mismatched bookshelves because, you know, I don't have all that much money and I don't have that much space for bookshelves, which becomes readily apparent when we get to the section of books that's just living on my floor. But I believe that is all the preamble I needed, so give me 1 second and I'll show you around this space. So this is roughly the angle you were just looking at, and yes, that is a TV where I usually sit. When I make videos, I need to move this, and then I also need to move this, and I have to do a lot of things to just basically make it so I can film against this wall that I think is super pretty and has a lot of really interesting things on it, such as this photo of me from when I was 16. This photo is called Stage Fright. And what you're seeing right now is pretty much the whole space. I'm going to walk you through the front door and show you basically everything except for the bathroom because it's kind of a mess right now and you guys know what a bathroom looks like. Let's hope the other people that live in this house that's been converted into 4 units aren't in the hallway right now. Here we go. There's the YouTube wall. There's the bed. That door over there is to the bathroom, and we have a closet, and this is our kitchen. So it's pretty little. There are books represented though. Like I've mentioned, I own 4 bookcases. One was a Christmas present for my parents the year that I moved into this apartment, which will be 5 years ago in October. 2 of the bookcases we found on the side of the road, and they happen to match each other, but we got them at separate times, so it's just interesting that they're the same bookcase, but 2 separate acquisitions. And then the 3rd one my roommate picked up at a yard sale. I think what I'm going to do is just number them 1 to 4 and then go through that way, so we have number 1 right here, number 2 right here, number 3 right here, and number 4. So I'm going to set this on a tripod so this video is much more easy to watch and just go through what's on each of these shelves. Also, fun fact, there are things on my bookshelves that aren't books and aren't cute bookish merch because we have limited storage and that's just where things ended up sitting. So I'm going to have to move some of that stuff to show you the actual books. Alright, so bookshelf number 1, shelf number 1, only really has 3 books on it. We have Ramona Blue, which is amazing. We have Heartless, which I haven't read yet, but my roommate definitely threw across the room to kill a spider the other day, so I found it on the floor when I got home. And then we also have Sorcerer to the Crown, which I also haven't read yet, but would really like to. Also, you're gonna see a bunch of random brand names on boxes, and obviously not Spawn. Again, very few books on this shelf as well, but obviously Battlestar Galactica is amazing and everyone should know about it anyway, so I'm totally okay with you seeing my roommate's box set of that. And the last shelf on this bookcase, surprise surprise, is another kind of overflow place. The most interesting things on this shelf would be giant Shakespeare, which you'll see much more Shakespeare in this tour, especially on the next shelf because it's primarily my roommate's stuff. Also of note on this shelf are a few copies of a book that I wrote and obviously am one of the few people that actually purchase copies of. But you know, that exists in the world. I wrote it in 24 days. It's a thing. Also, here is our first example of the floor being used as a bookshelf. This is the shelf that my roommate actually paid for, and this one has a lot of Shakespeare over here because he was an acting major. We actually met at university because we were both studying theater, and then I ran away to Europe, and then I came back, and then we reconnected. Over here we have some Patrick Rothfuss, which I haven't read yet because I want the third one to come out so I don't have to reread the first two when the third one comes out. Other items of note on this shelf that could be of interest are this book, which I actually haven't read but is from the Harry Potter Alliance. They have an apparating library, and this is one of their books that I picked up at VidCon. There's also something on the shelf that is not actually a book but looks like a book. Here's a potentially embarrassing thing to show you. This is my grad portrait from 2004. Here's the second and middle shelf on that bookcase, and this is a mixture of his stuff and my stuff. On the left, you have his stuff. All of those Harry Potter books are his. He doesn't have a complete series because he's just picked them up at yard sales. Something of note on this bookcase is this book was written by a friend of ours, and we each own a copy, so this is my roommate's copy, and my copy is on the third bookcase. And items of note on this bookcase include Radio Silence, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and it was a cover buy because this is gorgeous. Also, 2 out of 3 of Becky Albertalli's books are right here, right next to an Adam Silvera book, and I'm very excited for the book they wrote together. I have an ARC and I need to read it. And then all of the Becky Chamber books in the Wayfarer series because I just read this as an ARC, and it's real good, guys. I'm very excited for it to come out. You know, that means other people get to read it and we get to talk about it. And then we have this bottom shelf, which is again a little bit of roommates Shakespeare type stuff and school type stuff up until about here. And then on here we have some books I haven't read before. I did start reading Americana, and then Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said some transphobic things, so I stopped reading it. This one might be amusing to you. It's called How to Be Canadian, and it's written by a friend of mine and his brother, who are Canadian humans. And my cookbook collection, which is funny because I don't cook, but I like cookbooks. You may have heard of My Drunk Kitchen, you may have heard of Thug Kitchen. This vegan zombie book is great because it's kind of a comic book style format, and vegan food is what I eat, so there's that. This one is the first in a series written by a friend of mine who lives in Germany, and his books are amazing, and I just want him to cook for me all the freaking time. This is by far the most difficult shot to set up because this is a very tall bookcase. I'm here for scale, and my tripod is very short, so you're on top of a table and a tripod right now. In any case, this is more of a shelf where we put random things on it. This is the camera that I had before the camera I'm currently using, and it's basically its twin, but a different color and doesn't shoot HD. Items of interest on this shelf include, I have quite a few different Stephen Kings. We've got one here. We've got some of the Dark Tower graphic novels because I love the Dark Tower. In fact, if I can move these without absolutely destroying everything, yes, right there is the Dark Tower series, which I'm a big fan of, and I have to just pretend that movie just doesn't exist because it wasn't the Dark Tower. It was basically just a Harry Potter ripoff. I also have my John Green books right here, and the book with probably the funniest title on this shelf is Ballad of the Whiskey Robber, a true story of bank heists, ice hockey, Transylvania, pelt smuggling, moonlighting detectives, and broken hearts. This is a true story. Oh, yeah, it's right in the title, but it is, yeah. Dr. Horrible, no! He's okay. Wouldn't want to damage him right before the 10-year anniversary. Here's the second shelf right under that one, obviously, because you can see that. I like how they're very bent from all of the things that I have put on them. I actually at one point had to reinforce these because these were just put on basically on top of dowels, and I had to go through and reinforce every single one with brackets. On the shelf we don't actually have a lot of books. We have the travel book, which has interesting facts about all the countries, but behind that we have stacks of DVDs and some CDs, and my bookmarks all live in there, and then various greeting cards that people have sent me throughout the years, and this thing from Monroe's, which is a local bookstore, which is a really cool bookstore actually. Google it. The building is fascinating. It used to be a bank. And then of course we have Firefly, and unfortunately we have Con Man, which is an absolute dumpster fire, and I'll link a video with my friend Monica because I wanted to love this so bad and it was just terrible. Moving one shelf down and we get to another shelf that is actually mostly books. Hooray! So there are some fun things on the shelves. I have The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series, which I have never read because there's a lot of just talking about leaves falling off trees, and I just can't get through it. Like a true Canadian, I have some Canadian Tire money, which I tend to actually use as a bookmark. So that can go up in the bookmark spot. Here's some books I borrowed from my best friend 2 years ago and haven't gotten through because I went away on a trip, came back, forgot I was reading the series, so I should, you know, read them. I am the one person that she's fine with just having her books for years and not giving them back. Here are some postcards from that time I went to Russia. And hiding behind that stack of books we have some more Stephen King and the Welcome to Night Vale books and Felicia Day's book. Oh my goodness, if you have never read this book and you're an introvert or you care about humans who are introverts, which is, you know, a lot of us, read this book, you will understand us much better. Also, like a true Canadian, I have Anne of Green Gables, which we actually picked up on a family trip to PEI when I was about 11 from this house, because it actually exists. It is the author's house, and it was adorable. Oh, and like I mentioned, my friend Andrew Bailey's other book, my copy, the one that has been read in the house. My roommate doesn't read. Here by far is my biggest shelf of books, and then also just other random things like more recipes I've never used in my entire life. There are actually quite a few interesting items of note. You might notice that I have not only this copy of Jen Campbell's recent book, but also this one, because this one was an ARC and this is the finished copy, and actually her paperback is now on sale, so if you want a copy of this, go look for it in places. We also have Queens of Geek, which I love so much I had to go and buy my own copy after last year's Booktubeathon. Here is another book written by a friend of mine. And as you will note in the background here, these are all original Nancy Drew books. They are entirely stacked all the way down there, all the way down here, and there's some over here as well. And it's actually worth tearing down a small bit of this case to show you. I have the complete works of William Shakespeare myself, also Oscar Wilde, but then this is kind of fun and interesting to basically only me. These are my personal copies of my book. This is the first proof I did. I didn't really like the color scheme. This is the second one I did, and it was okay, but I liked the lighter blue better. And then this is my own final copy of my book. I will never actually ever read these because I hate reading my own work, and that's why I need a copy editor or an editor at all. I just like that I have them. Oh, also of note on this shelf are these. These are books I wrote in the 2nd grade. I actually read a couple of these books on the podcast, Grown-Ups Read Things I Wrote as Kids. But here's one of them. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, but it's especially hilarious to me. It's from 1993, and it's dedicated to my mom and dad, and that is interesting for reasons you'll see in just a second. So basically what you're missing in these 2 pages is there's 2 friends swimming in the ocean, I guess they're dinosaurs, and there's a monster that wants to eat them, so they run up on land, and then there's a T-Rex that wants to eat them, so he chases them, but they get away. And then when they get home, they find out that their parents have died. Because reasons? I don't know. I just really like that this book about parents dying is dedicated to mom and dad. And then this bottom shelf is almost entirely a junk shelf. There's like memory type crap in here. There's like no actual novels. I believe this is a scrapbook of theater things I've done. These are yearbooks from junior high and high school. And I believe this is my baby book. So this is full of some precious things, like I'm pretty sure there's a lock of my hair and possibly a tooth in here. But it also has wonderful things like these dance photographs from when I was very little. Look at how little and adorable and fucking great I look. That's cute. I look like I have a mullet, but it was the 80s, so that's fine. Mom is freaking cute, and I remember this truck. We had this truck when we moved to BC. Apparently I have an immunization record in here as well. I guess that's important. And apparently I had the chickenpox in 1988, so good to know. This is basically the face my dad makes anytime you take his photo. Oh. Here's the money shot. I'm not entirely sure why this turned into things I have on my shelf and not books I have on my shelf tour, but we're gonna go with it. I hope you're entertained. Now I need to move my exercise bike back where I'm currently sitting so I can get to the next bookshelf. So this is the top of the 4th and final bookshelf in our house, but I just wanted to show you the books that live on top of the bookshelf because I ran out of shelf space, obviously. So some of these are here because they're just friggin' huge and I have nowhere else to put them, and then some of them are recent acquisitions or books that are my favorite book in the entire world, and they just don't have a space on my shelves, but I like having them here because I love them. Also, these are 3 bookmarks that I got for my birthday from my friend Paige, and I absolutely love them, and they live on top of the stack. Inside of this one, I also stole a couple of bookmarks from Haslam's while I was in St. Pete because that bookstore was great. Other bookish things on this top shelf include this sample pack of candles. All of these are literary themed candles, and then also this haunted hotel candle, which I have not tried yet because I'm waiting for an appropriate season to do so. Many of these ones I've actually tried during my weekly tradition, which is where I sit in my bathtub and drink and read a book. First shelf on this bookcase only has one book, and it's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is the bookcase that's right next to where the television usually lives, except for when I'm filming videos, so it just makes sense that video games would be here. This is our penultimate shelf, and most of these books are books I actually haven't read before. This is kind of where I try to keep most of them, although they do just flood all over the apartment. The books on the shelf that I've actually read are the first of the Inkheart books, which is Inkheart. I've also read Handmaid's Tale, and I've also read Girl Reading, but everything else on this shelf is something I have not read before. That is actually a lie. I have read Sweeney Todd or The String of Pearls, which not many people know was written anonymously. And our very last shelf on the tour, but not our very last stop on the tour, is again mostly things I haven't read before. Let me see if I've actually read any of these. I've read some of Save the Cat, which is about screenwriting and storytelling, and I have read The 13.5 Lives of Captain Bluebear, which is an absolute brick of a book. But it happened and I did it. But many of these things are things that I either got for free or I picked up for really cheap at book sales. Yes, I'm still on the floor in front of that bookcase. My fan has been off for like an hour and I am super hot, but there is one more place that I store books, so I guess I should show them to you, even though they're definitely not on a bookcase. So this is my side of the bed. Try not to judge how messy it is. So on the table I tend to keep books that I've taken out from the library, books that I intend to read soon or I've borrowed, or things that I'm currently reading. Also, I do have a Kobo in there. That Kobo is probably about 10 years old though, so it loses battery pretty quickly. And then next to that I have this stack of books here. A couple of those are coloring books, but other than that these are all ARCs that I've gotten through work, and I have read none of them. Which is a real shame because things like space opera, I was dying to read it as soon as it came out and other priorities happened. And that's right, we're doing the outro again from my floor because it's too hot. So there you go, there's my very not fancy bookshelf tour. Because we have limited space and I live with another person, basically my books are cats. If they fits, they sits. Like I said at the beginning, if you have any questions about any of the books you saw in this video, please let me know down below and I am more than happy to answer questions. Something else I'm kind of interested in knowing is, was this a useful exercise for you guys? And I ask that from the perspective of these are just very, in my opinion, normal bookshelves of people that don't have the money to, one, collect as many books as they would love to collect, and two, don't have the space or money to store them in beautiful, aesthetically pleasing ways. So although I love seeing beautiful bookshelves and that gives me life, I'm hoping that there's at least a couple of people out there that feel better about their bookshelves for not being perfect. I'd also be really interested to know what your bookshelves look like down below. Let me know if you've been able to make them an aesthetically beautiful thing or if you're kind of haphazard like I am. So thank you to Instagram and specifically Rogan for making me do this video. If you're not already following me on that platform, all of my social media is linked down below, so you should follow me so that you can be the reason why I do things like turn off my fan for an hour and a half and sit in my apartment in a black shirt really stinking hot. Because this was actually really fun, even though I have, you know, that slightest bit of worry about the fact that I don't have beautiful shelves. And last but not least, if you've read any of the things that you saw in this video and you want to talk about it, let me know down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!